Hey there everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Satisfied Watch Collector podcast. My name is James and I will be your host for the show. Today we're going to be talking about the different types of luxury watches, and once we dive into that and define them, we're also going to look at how you break those rules, because I'm a little bit of a non-conventionalist when it comes to many things, but particularly with watches. So if you're joining me for the first time, I am all about you getting out of watches whatever it is that you want to get out of watches. And I want you to know and love the watches that you have so that you can be a satisfied watch collector. Now, if you do enjoy this type of content, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. I generally add new videos every week. So with that, let's jump into our topic. So again, today we're talking about different types of luxury watches. This is one of those things that I think is covered a lot, actually. And there are a lot of videos that you can watch on dress watches and sports watches and dive watch, like all those things. So I think my goal for today is we're going to actually dive into some of those. We're going to define some of the traditional categories, and then, maybe halfway through or so, we're going to get a little bit more interesting. We're going to talk about breaking the rules within those categories, because I love breaking rules. Not with most things, but when it comes to like traditional classifications or categories of things, I love kind of redefining them, coming up with a unique approach for them. It's a big part of what drives me to make this type of content, is because I just think that you should develop your own approach and that you're not bound by any conventions or rules when it comes to especially your watch collection, because your watch collection is such a personal thing, and even conventional notions of fit or use case for a watch, they can be really different. And so that's what I want to talk about. And I've got some dogs moving around by my feet, so if you hear some little barks or squeaks or whatever, don't worry, it's the dogs. It's not me, it's the dogs. Okay, so let's dive in. So let's define a couple of these genres of watches. And I think the place that I want to start, because it's the place that I started, candidly, is sports watches. Integrated bracelet sports watches. Now, there's been a incredible rise in demand for these things over the last several years that is really unprecedented. I mean, they always have been around, but the fact that you now can go to a Vacheron Constantin boutique and buy a third generation overseas watch and then go out a little bit later and resell that watch for more than what you bought it for is crazy. Of course, the epitome of this example is the Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711. I've talked about that a little bit before, but never before have we seen this in the fashion that it is now. Same thing with the steel Daytona, right? Daytonas have been around for such a long time. There were points when dealers could not sell them out of the case because nobody wanted them, and now you're paying triple retail basically for a steel white-faced Daytona. I think it's insane. So within this topic, again, we're going to define it a little bit. I'll share some ideas of some value pieces in that category, because I always want to incorporate that into these conversations. I don't want it to just be a list. I want it to be more of a dialogue and giving some options and some examples. So, let's jump in with the elephant in the room. We got to talk about Rolex. And I've shared my story again about like how I started and my journey to Rolex being my first real luxury watch. And the Sky Dweller is an integrated bracelet sports watch. It pretty much falls into that category pretty explicitly. And I think, if you're going to do this, make it interesting. Make it interesting. Now, I'm not going to talk any smack about like buying a sub or buying a Patek, Nautilus. They're great watches. You can't debate it. The only reason that they've gotten to that status of being so overhyped is that they're real good watches. They really are. So let's give credit where credit is due, and then we can move on and kind of out of the hype aspect of things. So with Rolex, you have a lot of options when it comes to integrated sports watches. So the Sky Dweller is probably not the first one that most people would think of. I mean, again, I think most people would think of either a sub, a GMT, or a Daytona. Those are like kind of the big three of Rolex, if you want to call it that. And for real good reasons, obviously. I mean, they've continued to refine those collections over decades at this point. I mean, the sub being introduced in like the early 1950s. So they've had plenty of time to refine them, to update them, to change a little bit with the market. And even with that, Rolex is such a long visioned company that they're not really doing anything to go along with trends. I mean, they're designing and they're making decisions like years and years out. So in a lot of ways, they're the ones that set the trends, I think, and others try to follow. So I think a Sky Dweller is a really interesting choice for a steel sports watch, because you get not only the 100 meters of water resistance, not only the kind of classic, like iconic Rolex design with between the bracelet with the brushed sides and then polished centers, but you also get like a fluted bezel, like you would get on a Datejust, which Datejust, of course, is a great watch. But the thing that I like about it is you add in the annual calendar and the GMT function. You have a dual time zone on there. I really love that. Having a local and a reference time, especially when traveling, is really helpful. I do think that's another one of the reasons why the Rolex GMT Master has been another big conversation in this category, because again, it's the same kind of thing. It has those kind of key Rolex features that a lot of people look for. There are so many others. I mean, you could talk about the Explorer as being one, obviously another very iconic. Now we have the Explorer 2 as well, with a polar or a black dial. That's a heated debate in some circles. So you got all those, and then of course you have like your other professional models, right? Like your Daytonas, your Deep Sea. I'm trying to think. I mean, Day-Dates, right? Of like more on the dressier side, I think. But those are all examples of like easily some of the best integrated bracelet watches. Now, that being said, let's talk about some of the other ones, because there are so many other ones. And then again, I'm not just going to make this a list, but like, what's the most interesting? To me, the Omega Aquaterra has always been a really, really great watch. We're going to talk later about go anywhere, do anything watches. I do think that the Aquaterra probably falls into that category so much better than many other watches that we talk about in this topic, because it's another one of those watches where the value is there. Rolex, the value is there from, I think, a performance, a brand standpoint. I mean, I dare I say a resale standpoint. Never buy a watch to resell it. Just don't do it. If you're in a spot where you're consolidating or something like that, yes, of course, Rolex is going to hold its value generally, but that's not the reason to buy it. So I do think Omega is a really great option there. You have, again, the Aquaterra is one of my personal favorites. You have like the Seamaster Pro 300 meter. Those are very popular. So I mean, either of those I think work really well. I guess the 300 meter falls a little bit more in the dive category, so we'll get into that a little bit later. IWC Ingenieur, another one, just refined and refined and refined over time. And they've been coming out with some really interesting like dial designs and patterns on the IWC. I think like the Chopard Alpine Eagle, really, really beautiful dial on those things. Like to have like that solarization kind of look on the dial that they do on those models is really, really cool, really unique. I like that there are some brands that are still kind of like innovating in that space in a way. So Chopard would definitely be one. Vacheron and Constantine. I mean, I mentioned that, I think in another video, and, also in this one. And I think that, Vacheron has an interesting proposition where even though they're in the Holy Trinity, they still are accessible. Like you don't have to have a crazy purchase history or any purchase history really to get into a Vacheron overseas. I had a buddy of mine who we were just kind of like getting into watches together in a way. I had already acquired a couple pieces, and he was kind of just starting to get into it, and we became good friends, and we went to a Vacheron boutique, and he was really attracted to the silver dial dual time, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous watch. Man, like if you've not seen the Overseas, I'm sure you probably have if you're listening to this, but go look at the Overseas collection. It really is beautiful. For me, I struggle with the fit on it a little bit. It's probably a little bit big for me, which is not always a deal breaker, but I don't love it enough to break that rule yet with the Overseas. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I mean, he went there. We went to this boutique. We sat down. We saw some of the pieces. And then literally like 2 weeks later, I think, he got a call from one of the reps that we were working with, and they were like, hey, we got one of these in. Like, do you want to come and see it? He went and saw it, and he bought it like 2 weeks later. And that was like his first like luxury watch. And that's an insane luxury watch to own. Vacheron makes incredible watches. So the fact that he was able to get into one with zero, like nothing, I mean, just walking in the door basically, is pretty incredible. And he had a really good experience with them. So that's what I appreciate about Vacheron. Just very, very accessible. And of course there are others. JLC, Jaeger-LeCoultre, now has the Polaris, a little bit more on the sports side of things. So there are plenty of other models to talk about. Again, I'm not going to be able to list them all, but I always kind of go back to like, all right, where is the value in these categories? So steel sports, Rolex, again, it's tough. I mentioned the reasons why I think that they are a value play here, but in terms of for the price point, I would say probably like an Explorer or an Oyster Perpetual, something at that more basic end, because they're not going to have a huge premium on the secondary market. Obviously, if you can get one from a dealer, I would probably be going for, depending on your wrist size, something like a 37 millimeter Yachtmaster, or maybe a 40, again, depending on your wrist size, how long you want to wait, all those types of things, because those would probably be a little easier to get. And again, at retail, I think those watches are great in terms of their value at retail. I don't think those are overpriced at all. So I do think there's some value there. I would say Omega blows this out of the water in terms of value in the sports category. Matas, certified chronometer, you get all the water resistance in the world that you need. They are super accurate with the movement. They're super anti-magnetic. With their hairsprings that they use, the technology in there, just very, very like amagnetic basically. And they have a great design. They really do. So my pick here probably, if we're going just purely value, would likely be an Omega Aquaterra. And that's another example where they have so many different models, colors, styles of, like the dial layout and everything. You could just go, you could get a whole collection of Aquaterras. Like you could have a whole Aquaterra sub-collection. So that would probably be my pick from a value perspective in the sports category. I love my Sky Dweller. I will always love my Sky Dweller, but Omega is really hard to beat on that. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's talk about dress watches. Dress watches are kind of, they're a little bit like underdone in my opinion. Again, there's a lot of people that will talk about them, but I think because they lack that versatility, and I think because formal events and just instances or occasions where you would need a dress watch has become so minimal, I think that we'll talk about breaking the rules later, but I do think that sometimes your sports watches and things in that category, maybe your go anywhere, do anything watches, are slowly creeping into what people consider to be dress watches. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's actually a good thing. But if we're going straight dress here, there's a couple that would come to mind right away. Two that I have in my collection, and you could probably argue a third maybe. So Girard-Perregaux. We've got to talk about Girard-Perregaux. They've been doing insane stuff. I was just scrolling Instagram and saw that they have another redesign on their 3 gold bridges concept watch, but now the whole case is engraved. It looks like there's some sort of guilloche, possibly enamel dial. a whole bunch of, what's the word I'm looking for? Hand engraving work. And it's just unbelievably amazing stuff. So Girard-Perregaux, kind of a sleeper brand in my opinion, and I say that very much being like I slept on it. I saw Laureatos out there all the time, not in the wild, but you just watch groups and things, and people would speak very highly of Girard-Perregaux, but I didn't really quite get the bug for GP until I came across, coming back to the dress watch topic, the 1966 Orion, and those couple of models. So they've got one in steel, which is the one that I have. They have one in I think it's a black DLC steel as well, which is really, really cool looking, just like a really dark aesthetic with this like vibrant aventurine dial. And then they also have a rose gold model, which I've seen a couple videos with, and it looks absolutely stunning. It was one of my decision makers in getting the watch because the aventurine dial on that is just great. So Girard-Perregaux, very much a what would I say, a big influence in the industry, and that's actually the reason for the 1966 series. Is that was the year that they won a chronometry prize with basically an annual contest where all these different watchmakers would enter their watches, into this contest, and all the other brands kind of brought in like these almost like toy-like movements, right? Not something that you would find in a production watch. And Girard-Perregaux was the first company to say, hey, like this is actually a watch that we would sell, and here you go. And they had incredible accuracy and beat out a lot of competitors, and that was a big turning point in some of those chronometry contests. So Girard-Perregaux, really love them. Continue to explore that brand a lot more. Next one would be Jaeger-LeCoultre. Again, if you've not seen the Master Ultra Thin Perpetual Enamel, I love that watch. I love that watch. It's probably the crown jewel of my collection, and just the different guilloche cuts in it, the enamel, the complication being a perpetual calendar. There's so much about it, and it's actually my only precious metal watch as well. So there's so much about that is like quintessential in terms of being a dress style watch. Their whole Master Ultra Thin line, perfect. Just perfect. Truly. Like, I love their design language. I've talked about that a little bit in the past. And, Reverso does, it is iconic. It does get a lot of the spotlight. But I just think JLC Master Ultra Thin series collection, I don't know. I'm probably biased, but I feel like everyone should own one in some way, shape, or form. Now, JLC, I will say, and Girard-Perregaux too, I would say are great from a secondary market perspective. GP I think is a little more reasonable. JLC I think at retail is probably a little bit on the pricey side for what you're getting. I guess depends on what watch you're buying, but and no disrespect to JLC because the watches are phenomenal and they're accurate and like they just cover a whole plethora of use cases, but I do think they're a little bit expensive. So I would highly suggest like find one pre-owned, and you'll save a whole bunch of money on getting one pre-owned. So that's some of my thoughts there on dress pieces. Patek Philippe, I mean, it's kind of almost goes without saying that they are up there in terms of, especially if you're talking like really, really high-end luxury, Calatrava series models. There's so many different references out there. Like I can't even like name them all because there's so many different ones. But they have a lot of really elegant looking moon phase dials. I really like some of those. Yeah, and even just the plain ones that are like three-handers, spectacular, or three-hander with a date. Really, really beautiful watches. It's one of those things. Patek, I've talked about this before, to me is a little, I don't know, maybe frumpy at times. It's not necessarily my jam, but you cannot knock the status they have achieved in the time that they've been making watches, and the fact that the Calatravas are pretty iconic in that way. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other dress watches out there. There are so many. I mean, there are just so many. We go back to Vacheron, like the Patrimony. or the Traditionnel, like just beautiful. So there's some really good ones there. We got to talk about the old Rolex Cellinis though for a second. I think those things were great, and I love my Sky Dweller to death. Probably the only watch that I would ever consider trading it in for, and I don't think I would do it because I have enough else in my collection that covers it, but the prior generation Cellini with a blue dial, it was white gold. I think it was 50 meters water resistant, and it had like it probably was not a hand guilloche dial, but it had like a nice guilloche to it, and it was beautiful. So I love those old Cellinis. Even the moon phase, Cellini moon phase in rose gold, a little more pricey, a little bit higher end, but very, very beautiful there. So yeah, and then of course, you can go with like, if you're going budget, we don't talk about that as much in a lot of these shows, but anything from, Citizen to Seiko, I mean, they make some really good dress pieces there if you're going a little bit down market. Another one that is underrated, in my opinion, is Crador. You can't really get them in the States, so you have to go pre-owned for them. But I found one. I actually had one in my collection for a little bit. It was I don't remember the model, but it was basically a thermocompensated quartz Crador movement. It was like a 37 millimeter case, I think. Really like just subtle and elegant and beautiful piece. I don't regret selling it because I went back. I wanted to get a Grand Seiko in the collection, but that thing was spectacular and it was like very inexpensive. So check out some Crador dress watches. Those things are beautiful, and not all of them are 50 grand. You can find some that are in kind of a reasonable price point and kind of along the lines of these other watches we've been talking about. So Crador, sleeper. Okay, next up. Well, I got to give a value play, right? I gotta talk about that. God, it's really hard to just say Omega to everything. Their DeVille, like Trésor line, I really love. Gosh, I do think, you know what? Here, I'll be bold and just say JLC, for the combination of features that you get. Again, buy it pre-owned. I do think it's probably one of the best values in dress watches. I do. I think it's great. So I'll go JLC for dress and value. I think that's true. And certainly comment down below. Let me know. There's a lot of other brands that either I'm not talking about because I just am not as fond of them, or they're just stuff that I don't look at a lot. So there's a lot more out there. So all right. Dive watches. Let's go into dive watches. And now in this video, I am wearing my epitome of dive watches here. I'm wearing my Ploprof, my Omega Seamaster Ploprof Summer Blue. I do love it. I really do love it. The fit was really tough to get right on this thing because, again, my wrists are super small, about 6 inches in circumference. And so finding a bracelet, strap, whatever it was, that would fit me properly was kind of tough with this one. And because it's really heavy, it wears on the wrist a little bit, my wrist bone. I've got to make sure I'm kind of wearing it in the right spot. Otherwise it'll just wear like hell on my wrist bone, and my wrist bone will be like red, after I get done with it. But that's just one of those things you have to work through when you have small wrists. So, but when it comes to dive watches, it is like one of the dive watches. It's like, okay, the Ploprof, the Rolex Deep Sea, there's a couple others like Omega Ultra Deep, like things like that. So, there are others out there, Blancpain 50 Fathoms. So there are some other dive watches out there, but I do think the Ploprof is actually a pretty good value buy overall. I think overall though, if I had to pick a winner for this category, it would probably actually be between the Omega Seamaster 300 meter, which I just design-wise I'm not as big of a fan of. I actually like the Ploprof a lot more. Ploprof a lot more. The 300 meter I think has a more popular aesthetic just because, again, it had that tie to James Bond, like back in the GoldenEye era, those types of watches. And some of those early Seamaster 300 meter models are timeless and they'll always be great watches. So you can't disrespect the status achieved there. I personally just don't like them as much aesthetically. So I did get to get hands-on with Blancpain. I went to Teddy's boutique in Ohio when I was there this past summer, and they had some Blancpain there, and I got to check them out. And I will say I really like the aesthetics on some of those watches, not the 50 Fathoms. I'm trying to remember, oh gosh, the Bathyscaphe. Yeah, that one I really liked. The finishing on it is very attractive, even though I know it's mostly mechanically applied. It's almost like a JLC type of vibe there, but it is very attractive. It's very nicely done, and obviously plenty of water resistance there. Great for an aquatic type of piece. So Blancpain would be great. Breitling, I'll be honest. I do think Breitling is well known. I do think it's out there. There are a lot of people who do like Breitling. I'm not as big of a fan. I just don't find too many of their pieces super attractive, honestly. But that's not to say that some people don't, right? I mean, that's the beauty of the hobby, is there are a lot of people that have different tastes, and that's why the watch world is amazing. Like Polaris, JLC Polaris, probably one of my favorite. That's like one of those collections that I always want to own, but can never actually find a reason to, because it just crosses over too much. But the Polaris Memo Box, I think I've said it before, probably one of my favorite pieces. It's just the coolest concept ever. So you have like a diving watch. It's got an alarm on it. Like, just really, really cool for so many reasons. And it's very wearable too, from like the case size. The lug to lug is not crazy. I think it's somewhere around 47 or 48. So pretty wearable from that perspective. So yeah, I do think the Omega would probably win the value play here, but like I say, the Bathyscaphe, when I was looking at those pre-owned, they're right in there. I mean, they're like 7, 8, 9 grand, depending on which one you're looking at. And for a really nice luxury dive watch that has a pretty good aesthetic to it and some different color options, I really liked it. And I think if I wouldn't have found the Ploprof and been as enamored with Omega as I am, clearly, because I've been talking about them all video, I think I probably would have gone with like a Bathyscaphe of some sort. Of course, that was one where I'm like, ooh, 43 millimeter ceramic, gorgeous, and I really liked it. My wrist, I probably should get like the 38 in titanium, I think is what it is. So we'll see. We'll see if that ever happens. But I've got my crazy diver now, so I think I'm good for a while. So, okay, last category, and then we're going to shift gears a bit. So go anywhere, do anything. Gotta watches. This is such a weird term to me. I understand the idea behind it, and I don't disagree with it, but I think the reason it feels odd is just because there's so many watches in these other categories that kind of fall into this category just by nature of the features, right? So when you're talking about lume and water resistance and travel complications and all those things, it kind of overlaps a little bit. So it always feels weird to me to talk about. But the gotta watch in my collection is absolutely my Dan Reuter. I've talked about Dan's watches before. I do have a review of my Reuter on the channel, so take a look at it if you've not heard of Dan Reuter. Just one of the coolest guys, one of the nicest, genuine people that I've met in the watch world, and a really interesting story too. I mean, he basically hand finishes all of his watches. Even though he uses, third-party stuff, right? He's using an ETA 7750. I think he upgraded it now in his latest watches, but he's doing a ton of hand engraving and crazy awesome polishing. It's just really spectacular, and they're bespoke pieces too, so you can customize it however you want. So I do have the Dan Reuter DR02 chronograph. That was a group watch from a watch group that I'm a part of, and that thing, at first I was a little hesitant to start kind of using it that way because it was beautiful. It's beautifully polished. And I've reached out to Dan, because we've messaged across the last couple of years since I've had it. And I just kind of said to him, I was like, I'm looking for something, like, I actually started out, I felt kind of dumb. I was like, can we modify this? To have like more water resistance, or, can we modify it? Because I'm a little worried about just using it for all these different things that I'm wanting to use it for. And he was like, I have had, clients of mine that use theirs for this and they do that with it. And I'm just like, oh, that's really cool. Like I didn't know that. And that gave me a lot more confidence in just doing everything literally with it. So again, it's a chronograph. It's an ETA 7750. It's got a day and a date, which is really, really helpful. I mean, it's got literally everything you would need right on a watch there. It's got some water resistance to it, and the case polishing is beautiful. So the color is insane. It's like a royal blue lacquered dial. And again, they are bespoke, so you can get whatever color you want. There's a friend of mine in a watch group that has kind of like an Italian themed one. It's like a white dial with the sub registers of the chrono are like red and green and black. Like it's just some really cool aesthetics to it. And it's another one where it looks great on the alligator leather that he gets made for it. Looks great on the rubber straps that he gets for him. So lots of different versatility there. So that's my go anywhere, do anything. Other ones that I wanted to talk about here. I mean, Tudor. You cannot talk about this category without bringing Tudor into the mix. I think it could probably be, we're going back to like the value play of like, sports and things. I think Tudor could be in that conversation for sure. I actually really liked the, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the model now. I think it's a black ceramic is the model. I don't normally like just an all black aesthetic watch where you can't really even see a lot of the detail on it. I actually really liked that watch, and if I would ever go for an all black watch, that probably would be the place that I would go. Because again, for I can't even recall, like $4 or $5 grand, something like that. You're getting the Matos certified movement. You're getting just a very, very durable watch, and that one's pretty subtle too, which I kind of like. So Tudor, Black Bay, Pelagos, they're all in that conversation. I think you could win with any of those. And then I've got to talk about Grand Seiko. I probably talk about Grand Seiko a lot because it's just one of the few brands that I think really, really deserves it. To get the finishing that you get with Grand Seiko's Zarasu polishing on a Swiss-made steel type of sports watch, you're basically talking about like Lange, maybe, or Patek. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And the fact that you can get into a Grand Seiko for $3,000 to $5,000 pre-owned, even new, like retail, they're still a pretty good value. Pre-owned, I think they're even a better value. The one that I think I initially looked at way back in the day was like an SPGA 375, just blue dial. It's got the power reserve on the front, which I kind of hate. And then you're getting like spring drive as well, like just a proprietary movement technology that's accurate to, I think it's like 10 to 15 seconds a month. So it's just hard to beat. Again, we talked about Omega being like a really good value play. Omega is pretty accurate again with their calibers, but hard to compete with Grand Seiko on the spring drive there. So yeah, so everything from the case design and the bracelet design, which people have critiqued Grand Seiko's bracelets, but other than a micro adjustment, which I know they've come out with this year in some models, I don't hate on Grand Seiko for that. I think that hasn't been their focus, because their focus is the polishing, the dials, the beauty and the elegance of the design, and the legibility. That was another big piece as they went into like the Evo 9, like the Evolution 9 collection, making the dial and the hour markers and the hands actually have texture and depth so that they were more readable. Because Grand Seiko, they do have some sportier models where they have lume and things like that, but a lot of their watches do not have lume. So in the dark, it would be hard to read. But because of the fact that they have the depth literally like engraved into it, essentially, into like the indices and stuff, it does help the legibility a lot. And I really appreciate that about Grand Seiko. So those are my 4 categories that I'm going to talk about today. And I think there are a lot of other ones we could touch on, but those are kind of your primary categories of luxury watches. Steel sports, sports in general, but let's be honest. I mean, Steel Sports has really kind of taken the reins on that. Dress watches, dive watches, and then your go anywhere, do anything watches. Those are like the big ones, in my opinion. And of course, I shared a little bit in terms of my collection, and then also, some other alternatives with you as well. So hopefully that was, you got some value out of that. So the last thing that I want to touch on in today's episode, and I know we're kind of running, let's see, yeah, we're kind of getting up there, but we'll keep going on this last topic, because I do think it's an interesting dialogue to have, and we touched on it as I was going a little bit in some of these categories, and that is breaking the freaking rules, man. Like, breaking the rules. And what do I mean by that? I would, like, one of my favorite things when I first got my Sky Dweller was take the bracelet off of it. And this was like a mortal sin for some people. I literally had an AD once. I was wearing it on a rubber B strap, and they were like, what are you doing with that strap on that watch? Like, that's supposed to be on a bracelet. And I'm like, yeah, dude, sorry, but like, this is how I roll. So, like, I remember that conversation. It was kind of funny. So one of my favorite things was taking a watch like a Sky Dweller, or, Grand Seiko, everyone says they're a strap monster watch. I don't know what that means. I mean, it just means they look good on straps. There's a lot of watches that can look good on straps when you find the right strap. So I love kind of like, if you want to call it that, breaking the rules and making something that would be in one category kind of fall within another. Like, I'm not just like a nihilist just for the fun of it here. Like, that's not the point. But again, anytime someone tells me that I shouldn't do something, that just makes me even more want to be able to do it. And so this is a great example of that. So like, I bought some small scale alligator leather straps, early on, and I bought one of them that matched my Sky Dweller dial. I wore the heck out of that thing. It's like I think it was a lizard strap, and the color was great, and you had that kind of nice variation of blue color that matches the variation of blue that you would see on the dial. So that was one. Rubber B. I love Rubber B. I've talked about Rubber B a lot, and they have their Swim Skin series is made to look like alligator leather. So I remember with one of my Aquaterras, I would do this a lot, and I would put, because my Sky Dweller Rubber B is a little bit more meant to be like an integrated strap type of thing, but some of the other ones, they look just like alligator leather, even though they're rubber. And so I would wear on my Aquaterra, when I had it all the time, I changed it out to that Rubber B strap, and it literally looked like it was, a navy blue alligator leather strap, but it was on an Omega, so you could still go in the water with it and, not have to worry about getting it wet. And that was just super, super fun. So those types of things, right? We're changing out the bracelet, changing out the strap, wearing it on a different occasion. You wearing a steel sports watch as a dress piece. I mean, this is kind of where I was going in the beginning, was like, that's a thing now. Like, that's a real thing. People are doing that. Like, people are wearing a day date to a formal event. Is it, I don't know. I mean, is that right? Is it wrong? I don't think there's an answer to that question. A Daytona. I mean, gosh, the Daytona. I almost like don't even want to bring it back up because there's so many more interesting models, but like wearing that as a dress piece, like especially, my opinion, the black dial ceramic Daytona, which looks way better than the white dial, like wearing that to something in a formal setting, absolutely beautiful, right? Just very, very sleek, very modern with the black dial. My Grand Seiko, so my LGA017, so a Skyflake dial, Evolution 9 case, spring drive, 5-day, backside power reserve. That actually, when I first got this watch, I was kind of redefining my collection a little bit. That was actually my formal watch. Like, that was my dress watch, because the indices on it, because it's steel, it's not titanium. The titanium ones I really, really like. So like, for instance, the Lake Sua SLGA 019, that is a titanium watch. Also Grand Seiko Evo 9, spring drive, 5-day. But because it's titanium, it has a little bit of a darker look to it. than I forget what they call it. There's a certain, they use a term for their steel now with Grand Seiko. They're kind of like branding. I think it's like Brilliant Steel or something. But the titanium looks darker. And so the steel one that I have, the indices on it were like blindingly white when you had light shining on them. I'm like looking at it over here. Like just blindingly white when you get that reflectiveness from light that came off of it. And that's actually one of the reasons why it is the lightest dial in my collection. And that's why I liked it, because I loved the contrast. I had a SLGH 007, I think, Night Birch. That was in the high intensity titanium, and the dial was super dark. And so then the metal on the indices and the hands, you got this really nice contrast because you had a darker dial and then the metal showed up a little bit lighter. And I love the contrast. That's one of the things that I still appreciate about most of my watches now, is you get a really nice contrast on it. The SLGA 017 that I have now, I still managed to find that contrast, but I just did it in a different way, because you have that like light skyflake dial, because that's what it is, it's a skyflake dial. There's a blue sapphire crystal, or like a blued crystal, so you see this little, almost looks like a chapter ring around the dial face on it, and the indices just glow white when you get light on them. And so that actually was like my formal piece, and I wore that to like, you know, weddings and date night dinners and all those sorts of things, because that's just kind of what I was going for. It was like I wanted a formal watch. Now, honestly, that I've got the Girard-Perregaux in the collection, the 1966 Orion, that's kind of taken that place a little bit. You know, and that is a little bit more on the, what you would consider like a traditional dress watch. But that's what I mean when I say breaking the rules. You know, like put my JLC Master Ultra Thin Perpetual Enamel on a, oh gosh, I'm like blanking on some of these terms tonight. Not a shark mesh bracelet, but like almost like a Milanese style bracelet, like they kind of did on the new Reverso, like the gold Reverso that came out. Friggin' gorgeous watch. But, you know, putting a dress watch like that on like a steel bracelet, you know, just totally changes the look and makes it a little bit sportier, even though it's still a dressy watch. So that's what I mean when I talk about like breaking the rules. And again, it's hard to even maybe talk about some of this because there's nothing hard and fast about it. But point being, take your watch collection and just like map out what your use cases are for each piece that you have, and just see, like, just for fun. It's just like a fun exercise. See if you can get it to fit into one of these other categories. You know what I mean? Like, and there's some watches that you probably won't be able to do it with, and that's fine. I mean, like, again, the Ploprof, like, I don't think I'll ever be able to wear this thing as a dress watch. I mean, I definitely, oh, believe you me, I looked at Rubber Bee's website because I was like, man, if I could find, like, you know, something cool to strap-wise pair with this watch, that'd be epic. I don't think they even had anything in the swim skin that was 24 millimeters lug width, which this one is. You know, this one I was like looking more at those like ballistic style straps, just because it's real hard to do that with this. So again, I don't think you'll be able to do it with everything in your collection, but that's another way to make your collection more versatile, in my opinion, is just find something that you can basically jump to another category and see how it goes. And no, I'm not, you know, I'm not advocating that you wear, you know, I'm not going to wear my JLC Master Ultra Thin, you know, swimming in the pool, right? Like that would just be insanity. So I'm not saying, you know, suicide for your watches. I don't mean it that way. But from an aesthetic standpoint, right? Just finding ways to change the aesthetics of your watch to get it from one category into another. And that creates a really interesting conversation. And especially when you get in around watch enthusiasts that are like somewhat traditional about watch collecting, and they're like, no, you shouldn't wear that as a dress watch, or no, that's not a sports watch, you know, like that. Sometimes it's just fun to like, you know, kind of push their buttons a little bit and be like, no, I wear this to, you know, wedding, or I wear this to like, you know, just that kind of stuff. So that's what I mean when I talk about like breaking the rules, kind of breaking the barriers with that. let's reinvent it. I mean, let's just reinvent it and have fun with it. And let's make, like I say, with my Grand Seiko, like make that thing a friggin' formal watch. Even though it's got a steel bracelet and water resistance and all those other things, like it can be a formal watch and it looks great. And I get a lot of compliments on it as a formal watch. So that's my thought on that. And I talked about the straps and stuff, but get creative with it. I mean, certainly I have come to wear my Sky Dweller more now on bracelet, but that's only because of the fact that I have other watches that have taken the spot of being like my dressier pieces, and so and like a little more of my go anywhere, do anything pieces, so I haven't needed to do that. But for a long time, the reason that I actually got the Sky Dweller in the first place was because I saw a rubber B strap on it, and I thought the color of the strap matched the dial perfectly, and that was the aesthetic that I wanted for it, way more than what it looked like on bracelet. So that's been a little bit of an evolution for me, particularly with that watch. But that's what I'm, interested in and curious to see what you all come up with. So thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Again, please do like the video if you enjoy this style of content, and subscribe to the channel. I do make videos pretty much every week. And I'd love for you to leave a comment down below. Let me know, like, what is your favorite type of watch? Do you have a favorite type of watch? Is your collection more focused in one area, whether that's, again, dress or sport or divers, or go anywhere, do anything, because you want everything to be versatile all the time? Tell me what that is, because I would love to know. And certainly if you have any ideas or feedback or show topics that you want me to cover, let me know. And until next time, please, again, get out of watches whatever you want to get out of watches, so you can know and love the pieces you have and become a satisfied watch collector. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.